Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about moon conspiracy theories. Yes, that big hunk of rock that is up floating around us in space, and we have no idea how it got there or why it's there. Now for me, I actually love the moon. I mean, who doesn't, right? I find the moon to be so beautiful, so calming, and the moon is a big part of my personal belief system, which I'm not, a part of any religion, but the moon is a huge part of astrology, and I believe that it's there for a reason, maybe a reason we don't understand. Some people think that the moon is not natural, that it could be something fake, and that's just one of the many theories about the moon. I looked into a bunch of different moon theories. I'm going to share a couple of interesting ones with you guys today, just briefly going over each one, and yeah, you guys will have to let me know what you think of these moon theories. But before we get started, I wanted to thank our sponsor for today, Shudder. So many of you have heard me talk about Shudder before, but basically it's a streaming service for scary content. So a lot of you guys are really into that type of stuff. And today we're going to be talking a lot about aliens. And I know so many of you guys love alien related content. So there's one movie on there particularly that I checked out called Monsters. And this is kind of a post-apocalyptic type movie. And it's about a couple who have to kind of go through a country that's overrun by alien monsters. In the movie, a NASA probe carrying samples of alien life had crashed over Central America, and basically all hell breaks loose. A bunch of new different types of scary new life forms begin to appear there, and it's basically about how they deal with it and try to make a meaning of this new world while also trying to stay alive. If you're not into aliens but you still like spooky content, there's definitely something on there for everyone. They have older movies, old like classic movies, they have newer ones, they have a huge selection of scary content. So if you're interested in checking out Shudder and want to start with a free 30-day trial, you can go to shudder.com and use the promo code Kendall Rae. That's shudder.com and promo code Kendall Rae. Normally Shudder is $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, and everyone can use Shudder because you can stream it on pretty much any device. So be sure to check that out. Remember, it's shudder.com and promo code Kendall Rae. Now let's go ahead and get into talking about the moon. So the first theory is the hollow moon theory. Now if you've not heard of this, yes, people think that the moon is hollow, and maybe it is. The suggestion of a hollow moon actually appeared when English writer Herbert George Wells wrote about a hollow moon in his book The First Men in the Moon in 1901. And then in 1970, two men named Michael Vassin and Alexander Sherbakov were members of the Soviet Academy of Sciences. And while they were there, they created a hypothesis that the moon is actually a spaceship created by unknown beings. Now this really reminds me of the movie The Truman Show. If you've never seen it, this is a spoiler alert, so fast forward, but it's old as hell, so. But in the movie, Jim Carrey plays a guy named Truman, and he lives in this fake world. And there's actually a fake moon in his fake world, and in the fake moon, there are people who have all the computers and control everything going on in the world. So it's an interesting idea. Now the reason that they had this hypothesis was mainly because they believed that the large lunar craters, generally assumed to be formed from meteor impact, are too shallow to have flat bottoms. And this is kind of interesting to think about. You'd think if something slammed onto the moon with, people say it's like light stuff, like wouldn't it make a much bigger hole? I mean, it's hard to understand space though when you're not an astrophysicist, but I don't know, it's very strange to think about. They basically think though that the meteors were hitting the metal framework, which made the bottoms all flat and even. So their thesis is basically that the moon is a hollow planetoid that was put into orbit by aliens to monitor us. Now, this is very strange, and I didn't know this, but apparently the moon has a subtle ring to it. It rings. Between 1972 and 1977, seismometers, which is an instrument that measures ground motion caused by earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and explosions, were installed on the moon by the Apollo missions. The moon was described as a ringing or vibrating bell during some of those quakes, especially the shallow ones. They said that there were reverberations going for hours. They were traveling across hundreds of miles, which is something that just doesn't happen on Earth. And, you know, this is kind of in rumor land, but apparently when Apollo 12 landed on the moon, there was a ringing sound on their landing that lasted an hour. So lunar seismologists and experts believe that the lunar body has shallow moonquakes that act differently from the ones on Earth due to different texture, different type, different density. How many of you have been to the moon? Like, I bet it's pretty fucking different. But they claim that there is no evidence of any type of activity going on inside of it as far as humans or aliens or life forms living inside the hollow moon. The moon is also much less dense than Earth. But that is a very interesting theory to think about. And I will say the whole crater thing is kind of strange. Could it be? Possibly. Is there any evidence? Not really. There's a little bit, but I don't know how much. The next theory is that the moon is an alien spacecraft. So people believe that this could be a giant spacecraft that aliens put into our orbit long ago to keep an eye on us. Some people think that the aliens actually flew this rock right over to us so that it could spy on us from afar, which seems kind of weird. How far can you see down? Now, another part of the theory is that there have been a lot of really old rocks discovered on the moon, rocks that are way older than Earth, and that is confusing because we were told that they formed around the same time. Now, scientists say that the reason that this is because Earth is still active. It's still producing new rocks, and so the older rocks go back into the Earth. So, interesting. But because of this, people really do think that aliens brought the moon from another place in space that has been around longer. And then there's people that still believe that we're being watched by aliens on the moon and that maybe they have dug into it and live inside of it, but that they didn't create it, that it's not fake, that they found it that way and was like, jackpot, we can spy on them from here. So that brings up the whole idea of the dark side of the moon. Now, it is much more fun to refer to it as the dark side of the moon, but it's actually called the far side of the moon because it's not technically always dark. Now, what's really interesting is the far side of the moon is actually different on the surface than the side that we see. So the moon that we are all familiar with, I'm sure you have seen the moon, generally looks pretty smooth and is covered with a few large dark splotches. The other side, however, is very different. It has a bunch of craters and also has way fewer dark spots. The dark spots are caused by lava from volcanic activity years ago that is solidified. Now, wouldn't there be volcanoes all over the moon then? Why aren't there any eruptions on the far side of the moon? Well, because apparently scientists have figured out that the side that's close to us is a lot thinner than the far side of the moon, and volcanoes can easily break through that crust versus a thicker crust. So that is why. But why? Why do they have different thickness on both sides? Well, scientists believe that at one point we actually may have had two moons, and that is when the idea of the Theia impact comes in. And it's basically a theory that Earth and some type of big astronomical body the size of Mars could have collided about 4.6 billion years ago, causing a chunk of debris to fly off and eventually become known as the moon. Now, this is really confusing to me. I wish there was someone here that could explain this, but I don't know why it would be in a perfect circle if it like broke off as a chunk. So they say that after this impact, there were two smaller moons. And the theory goes that eventually the two moons kept getting closer together until they just became one. Now, this is a real scientific theory. This is not just some like theory, but they do believe that the smaller moon was spread across the bigger moon, making one side thicker than the other. So, what could be on the far side of the moon? Well, there are a bunch of different theories about what could be on the other side. People believe that there could be towers, antennas, satellites, and who knows what else planted on the other side of the moon. There are rumors that various astronomers claim that they saw a UFO, and there are actually a ton of astronauts that claim to have seen a UFO when landing on the moon. And US Air Force Sergeant Carl Wolf actually made a public statement discussing how in 1965 he was shown images that showed that they discovered a base on the backside of the moon where he was working as a precision electronics photographer repairman on the Lunar Orbiter project for the NSA. He said that the pictures showed mushroom-shaped buildings. And I have heard a lot about this type of stuff, and I must say, I really think it's possible that there is a base on the moon. I believe that. Also, a woman named Donna Hare, who is a contractor for NASA with security clearance, also claims to have known multiple astronauts who have reported seeing UFOs in space. Donna says that she remembers the code word for these UFO sightings being Santa Claus. She also claims that she met with several security guards who were forced to delete photos or burn them. And you guys, there are so many people who had like high clearances that now are like whistleblowers, like leaking information. Do you think they're all just like went crazy, just started making shit up? Doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? She said that one day she met someone specifically that had to burn photos, and he accidentally looked at them. He claims that he saw a UFO, but before he could say anything, he was hit in the head with a gun and knocked out. And then there's the idea that aliens might live in the moon in different tunnels. These are lava tunnels called lunar lava tubes, and they're basically tunnels that were formed along flowing lava around the moon. Some people, though, believe that there might be alien life living in these tunnels. Now, I of course can't confirm this, but numerous sources have said that NASA apparently has admitted that these caves could be used as potential locations for a human colony on the moon. If they're admitting that these tunnels would be a good place for humans to live on, then what's to say that aliens aren't living there already? And then there's a theory that the back of the moon plays music. Back in 1969, Apollo 10 was the second manned mission to orbit the moon. And while they were orbiting the moon, they started orbiting the backside of the moon. And when you go over the backside of the moon, you lose all radio connection with Earth. When they came back around, they regained contact with Earth and everything seemed to be going fine. However, almost 4 decades after this, the recordings of what really happened on the far side of the moon recently emerged. Basically, just because they weren't able to, communicate back and forth, it was still recording what was going on in the ship as they went over the far side. And it's actually been discovered that these transcripts were secret classified documents for a while. So it wasn't until 2008 that these tapes resurfaced. And the tapes contain incredibly weird whooshing sounds. Listen.
That is music even sounds outer spacey, doesn't it? Do you hear that? That whistling sound?
After the sounds, the astronauts start talking about how they all heard them. They were all hearing it, and you can hear them talking about how they were worried that they wouldn't be able to tell people on Earth because no one would believe them. But the scientists claim that this is just radio interference, those weird sounds. But it doesn't make sense because wouldn't the astronauts have been used to radio interference? And that's not what they were hearing. Now, of course, when we talk about the moon, we gotta talk about secret government projects. So the idea of there being some type of base on the moon, whether that's a government base from Earth or aliens or who knows. Some people even believe there's like testing facilities up there and they're doing secret government projects and stuff where they can't be found. Some people believe Hitler lives on the moon. I mean, the moon theories are endless. And I must say, of all of the theories, I do think that there could be a base of some type on the moon. Now, I do want to say, just recently, China launched a probe onto the moon to explore the far side of the moon, and so far, not a lot of whole exciting things to see. So we'll see. But that's, based on whether or not you believe these agencies, which NASA in particular has been caught lying many, many times. Seriously, like confirmed. I think the weirdest thing about the moon that just bothers me is that there have been 6 moon missions to land on the moon, and the last one was in 1972, and we've never gone back. It's almost been 50 years and we haven't gone back. Now, I find it hard to believe that we did everything we needed to do on the moon and we have no further research to do. It just seems odd. And so a lot of people think that the reason we don't go back to the moon is because astronauts started talking, which they did, and spilling the beans about UFOs. They didn't want to take the risk of taking anyone else up there, and maybe they are secretly doing stuff on the moon because it doesn't make sense to just have nothing going on with the moon as far as actually being there. I don't understand why we wouldn't have set up a base or something a long time ago. But as of now, the moon remains a mystery. Let me know what you guys think yourselves. Do you think that there's actually some type of hollow moon, that someone's living inside of it, that the moon could be fake? Do you believe that the moon's natural? I do, but it could have some type of base on it? Possible. Do you think that the moon makes sounds, and what do you make of that whole thing and what the astronauts said when they went on the other side? I really want to know. Let me know in the comments what you think. If the moon is actually fake, that would really ruin a lot of my beliefs. So I hope that the moon is a natural formed thing that is supposed to be there, but who fucking knows? telescopes, right? I have seen too much, you know, doing these videos. I've seen things that have blown my mind, so I guess anything's possible. All right, guys, that's it for me for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to give me a thumbs up, and that's it for me today, guys. I will see you